name is Shelley Rubin, and I'm the founder of Blade of Grass, the host with the Alliance Française of tonight's program. Blade of Grass is a new nonprofit, first of its kind, solely dedicated to nurturing socially engaged art. We make grants to both organizations and individual artists and create learning opportunities like this one tonight. Just in case you don't know where you are on the 8th floor, which is a private exhibition and event space created by my husband Donald and myself to promote cultural and philanthropic initiatives. The wonderful exhibition around you, maybe you've had a chance to look at it, is inspired by the exhibition that was of the same name, that was on the Malecón in the Havana Biennale in 2012. The name is Detrás del Muro, I think. But tonight we're not talking about Cuban art, as wonderful as it is. We're here to hear a discussion between Mary Mattingly, Maria Canela, Antonio Sergio Bessa, and Bill Adair. Deborah Fisher, the Executive Director of Blade of Grass, will moderate the discussion. And just as a note, in case you have nothing else to do any day but Tuesday, and you'd like to walk further down on 17th Street, the Ruin Museum of Art is down between 7th and 8th. And my husband and I, who believe in art for all, believe that 17th Street is a place to look at art. So come here for events and go down to look at some art.
All right. Thank you, Shelley. And thank you for hosting us here at the 8th floor. My name is Deborah Fisher, and I'm the Executive Director of Blade of Grass. We are thrilled to be working with FIAF on 2 programs as part of their Crossing the Line Festival. This one this evening, which is about the relationship between socially engaged art projects and the institutions and funding agencies and participants that make them go. And we're also going to be co-hosting a great project tomorrow night, a talk with Steve Lambert that you're going to go into today. So it's true that A Blade of Grass does nurture socially engaged art. We provide grants and fellowships to individual artists. I have a couple of that are working with socially engaged art projects. I have just a couple of announcements before we get started. We have 2 deadlines for grants and fellowships to individual artists. December 2nd, right? So if you are an artist who makes socially engaged art, or if you're an organization who wants to start working in this ways, please visit our website to get our grant guidelines. We have fellowship workshops for individual artists who are considering applying. Our next one is on November 6th. We have a great discussion about the effectiveness of socially engaged art and activism that is going on our blog right now. So go to abladeofgrass.org, click on the word discuss, and you will see posts by Nader Thompson, Tom Finkel-Pearl, Ben Davis, and Rick Lowe of Project Row Houses, and me as well. And you can join the discussion there. And just one last note, we have a great web presence, Facebook, Twitter, join our email list, get all the news, okay? So, Simon.
Hi, welcome everyone. I'm Simon Dove, I'm one of the co-curators of Crossing the Line. I just wanted to say hi and welcome and do a little bit of promo. We're right in the middle of the festival now. The brochures is this gorgeous golden book which is on the table. But this conversation that we've set up and been working very extensively with A Blade of Grass, which has, I have to say, been very fruitful and very rewarding. We've set up a number of projects within the festival that are looking at different ways of engaging and activating communities. One is tomorrow, which is part of Steve Lambert's project, which is called Capitalism Works for Me, True or False. His big sign is going to be in Times Square from Sunday, from October the 6th through to the 9th, for 4 days, from noon till 7. So you can go along and vote, but you can also engage really in the conversation with Steve around capitalism. He's having a conversation tomorrow night in the AMC 25, which is the big cinema on Broadway, on 42nd Street and Broadway. It's the biggest grossing cinema in the country, so we're happy to be there. And he's we're not showing a movie. We'll be showing some clips of the interviews that we did in Times Square when we put the sign there. But also, Steve will be in conversation with Richard Wolff, who's an economist, an historian, and Harriet Fraad, who is a social psychologist. So really, he's asking them, does capitalism work, tomorrow at 7. So please come along if you can. On Thursday at 10:30 in St. Paul's Chapel, which is the gorgeous chapel next to Ground Zero, Ernesto Pujol is doing a 24-hour performance piece. It's more of a ritual promenade performance. It's completely free, open to all from 10:30 in the morning on Thursday right through the night to 10:30 on Friday morning. So if you can join us then, it would be great to see you there. But get a brochure and you can see all the other things we're doing. I'll hand you back to Deborah. Thank you.
I want to assure everyone that the feeling is mutual. We're really thrilled to be working with FIAF. Tonight, we're going to be focusing on the relationship between socially engaged art projects and all of the people that support them, right? So we're off to the races. Tonight we have 4 great individuals, and we're going to start with very brief introductions about specific projects, right? And then we're going to go into a conversation about the relationship between the artist's vision, right? And then all of the stakeholders that get involved in projects like this, okay? So Mary Mattingly is going to kick us off. I have a little bio information. Hold on. Thank you. Mary Mattingly's work includes the Waterpod Project, a barge-based public space containing an autonomous habitat for 5 artists that docked within 5 boroughs of New York City, and the Flockhouse Project, which was 3 spherical living systems incorporating rainwater collection and gray water recycling through edible gardens, solar power, and portable living spaces that were choreographed through New York City. Currently, a new project, Turtle Island, is being exhibited and inhabited at Pier 42 in Lower Manhattan. Mattingly recently took part in the Smart Power Project, an arts and cultural diplomacy program spearheaded by the Bronx Museum of the Arts and the U.S. State Department. Her work has been exhibited nationally and internationally. Mary, why don't you kick us off and talk a little bit about your project into the microphone?
So I have some slides.
Yeah, you don't have to carry that whole. Yeah, okay, cool.
So I wanted to talk about the Waterpod project very briefly. This is a sketch of the project. It launched in 2009, and basically it took 2 years to plan, and that was logistics planning and facilitating partnerships. The structure was a 100 by 30 foot flat deck barge, and the infrastructure on top of it was enough to support 5 rotating artists and to have a public space. So it was built out with the help of the GMD shipyard through a partnership with the city and the Brooklyn Navy Yards, and basically all of the materials were sourced from a local waste stream, or else they were donated by local businesses. So this is what it ended up looking like. It went to the 5 boroughs from June through September of 2009, June through November of 2009, and stopped at public piers for about 2 weeks at a time. The infrastructure I'll just go into very briefly. So we had rainwater collection on top of all those rooftops. We purified the rainwater. We used it for drinking, showering, and cooking. Whatever was left over went through a gray water cleaning system, and then we used that water to water the plants, which we ate. We also had eggs from 4 chickens and solar panels that powered everything. And the point of it was really to try to understand and imagine a potential future for New York City with climate change. So it was a collaboration. Probably 50 groups and individuals were all stakeholders in the project. These are some images from the Department of Education. We worked with them to bring camp groups there in the summertime that we did projects and workshops with that included art and ecology lectures. We also had an onboard live-in curator who planned events, and then we left it open for people to plan their own events at the places we ended up in. And then finally, we were able to be a temporary park, and that was pretty fascinating. We reached like 200,000 people came onto the water pod during the 5 months that it was circulating in the city. Thank you.
Impressive. So, next we have Maria Canela. Maria is from Jarabacoa in the Dominican Republic and has been living in the United States since 2006. She started working with the Queens Museum of Art at the very end of 2008, where she has been the new New Yorker's Student Council Coordinator for the past 2 years. Through the Queens Museum, she started visiting Immigrant Movement International, an art project by Tanya Bruguera, when Tanya Bruguera began implementing the project, and she has been deeply involved in the project ever since. Maria also works as a community organizer at Make the Road New York and is a web designer. So Maria.
Hi, thank you to be here, to hear, our ideas, and I feel so honored to be here because I'm just working at Queens Museum and the Immigrant Movement, making, what I think is good for me and for the community. And I never could think about that could be important for the artist. It's our dream, our crazy dream. We think the artists need to hear the community and to understand what the community is expecting of them. We need the project, not just like exposition. We need to be part of that, part of the permanent message for the community from the artists. It's okay. I hope to get some ideas for you, and I love the project. I never mind this to be.
Great. Okay, do you want to talk a little bit about Immigrant Movement?
Immigrant Movement. Okay, Immigrant Movement is was a project for Tanya Bruguera. Tanya Bruguera is an artist, and she's really, how can I call Tanya? Tanya, I don't know if you hear about her, but she worked is an activist and artist at the same time. She's from Cuba, and she brings some wonderful ideas to Queens. And Queens Museum is helping her to do that. This project is different any project that I know. At the first time I went to the workshop, the first workshop when they opened the door for the public, I felt, I don't know how to say how I feel, but from the first day to 2011 to now, I am part of Immigrant Movement. We work with people, asking the people what they need, what they want. At the first time, Tanya said, okay, we're gonna make activists, we are politicians, we're gonna fight, but the community come and say, I need English class, I need, I need documents, I'm an immigrant, I need OSHA class, I'm a worker, I don't have time for activists. I don't have time to do that. And she said, okay. And we found so many volunteers to teach English, to teach the people what they want. But she introduced the art in that. Making English class with theater, making origami. Origami is art with they're making jewelry with trash, with recycling and recycling. Actually, most incredible group is the music class for children. They teach the children to play the violin, but they teach the children to make a violin from paper, recycling objects. They draw a violin, and at the end they play a real violin for the community. And the class is beautiful. You know, we had so many workshops, and I have over there I put some flyers from Immigrant movement. I bring the things we have for the public, and you can take it. Yeah, take it. That is another idea. We try to engage the community, and we try to give something for the donation. We never ask for donation. Canela said, I want the immigrant movement free. You know, I wanted the people coming here and taking free. And it's difficult, you know. But that idea is nice. There are some pictures with a message. That one is a picture from Arizona. I said, Arizona, a dry heat for xenophobia. And, you know, there is another one, and we put that over there. If the people want to donate $1, it's okay. If not, just take it. When we ask to the community, what do you like about immigrant movement? They say, oh, I like immigrant movement because it's free. And we say, oh, sometimes when I am there, they're coming and they say, okay, how much is that? I said, it's free. No. How much I have to pay for the class? Nothing. If you want, please come with us and volunteer for us. It's the main idea I want to leave in you. Today in New York, something is real free for the people in immigrant movement.
Fantastic. Okay, Sergio. Sergio Bessa is the Director of Curatorial and Education Programs at the Bronx Museum of Art, where he joined in 2003. He teaches museum education at Columbia University's Teachers College. He's a distinguished scholar of concrete poetry. He's organized several critically acclaimed exhibitions on themes related to text-based art at venues such as Apex Art, Baumgartner Gallery in New York, BAWAG Foundation in Vienna. Is it the word or is it the letters? Bavag. Yes. Okay, good. We're Viennese. And the Institute d'Art Contemporain in Lyon, France, among others. He was one of the curators of the third Triennial Poligrafica in the San Juan, Puerto Rico, which opened in the spring of 2012. He is the author of Oyvind Falstrom, The Art of Writing, and the editor of Novas, selected writings of Haroldo de Campos and Mary Ellen Solt, toward a theory of concrete poetry. Sergio.
Yeah, it's a very convoluted bio, but
that's okay.
I think I'm a little bit schizophrenic. All right, so you asked me to talk about sort of a program from the Bronx Museum, and I thought of talking a little bit about one of the first projects that I did at the museum that involved the community. So the first thing that I want to sort of say is that I kind of depart from sort of an educator's kind of mentality. My degrees are in education, and I've been dealing with education for a long time. So for me, and I myself, I'm very didactic. You know, my partner, if you agree that, I kind of give directions like very. So, and I'm into that. I love reading recipes and stuff that kind of spells out steps. So, and my approach to education is a little bit like that. It's how you set up steps. It's also a little bit of designer mentality. So that's just the prep. So the project that I want to talk about is, it was called Action Lab. And we implemented it at the Bronx in 2004. And the idea behind was when I started at the Bronx in 2003, I was brought in to design the entire education department because at that time, the previous director had left about 6 months before, and there was a study of the needs of the community and some recommendations for the department, but there was no one to implement. So I came at that point, and I also came with a fantastic opportunity that we had $5 million from the Small Business Administration to help building the new building, which was going to be sort of mostly an education facility. And I had about 2.5 earmarked just to implement programs. So I basically started the museum, with a budget of $500,000, which now it's like, seems like a dream. I don't have that anymore. But I had, $500,000 a year to hire staff and, everything. Now, in addition to that, there was this one grant of $200,000 that the congressman in the area, Congressman Serrano. Congressman Serrano is the one who facilitated the major grant of $5 million. And in addition, he also carved 200. And he said, well, this grant, I really want to develop something with Hunts Point. So that's how I got to the Bronx Museum. In conversation with my boss at the time, who was a really wonderful person, but she came from Curatorial. She always thought about, big projects, big names. And she was kind of fidgeting about what to do with this money. And she said, well, let's drive in the neighborhood. I had never driven around Hunts Point. And she said, what should we do? Maybe, get a sculptor to do a sculpture, or, something. And driving in the community, I was just like, the last thing people need here is a sculpture by someone who lives downtown.
Yeah.
You will come here, unveil, and then you'll never show up. So I said, well, let me think about that. And then bringing back my education thing, I was like, well, I think we need to implement something here that will have some duration, some sustainability. And at the time, I was kind of trying to convince my staff to embrace some theories by Paulo Freire, the Brazilian educator, issues about dialogue and stuff like that. So I thought, well, these 200,000 can be an opportunity to also engage teachers in the area and schools and, and kind of do a whole education thing. So the design part of it was that I split this 200,000 in 2 years because, I think the first year is testing, the second year is solidifying, and if you can do a third year, it's even better, right? So, and then what we did was we split that 100,000. A little bit went to overhead because we hired a manager just to supervise that. And we opened a competition for local artists. We really did not want to engage, downtown man. Right. We wanted this money to be used in the Bronx, for the Bronx, with Bronx artists. So we did, and actually there is an artist here today, Darkim. Are you here? Yes. So Darkim, actually, coincidentally, I did not ask him to come here today, but he was one of the grantees at the time. So, and it was an amazing opportunity for the museum because it was a way for us to get to know the local artists, like Darkim, for example, who later got to other programs at the museum and so forth. But also, we did this in collaboration with another organization in the Bronx, The Point. So it was great sort of staff to staff. And then bringing all the teachers that we could kind of reach out to. And I think in the first year, we got a lot of applications. We did sort of a meeting to explain the grant, and there was a lot of little sort of steps to, to get the grant. And but the main thing was that the project was not about plot sculpture. It was about engaging the community.
Right.
So it's like if you're a painter, how are you going to engage people in your process and so forth. And also we're not very successful in that, but we really wanted this project to also collaborate with other community centers, nuclei in that area. There was like issues, all sort of issues, like drug use or prostitution. There was quite a lot of social problems that the point was eager to address, like police brutality.
Sure.
And we kind of put the whole thing there, and we asked the artists, what do you feel comfortable with, and how you're going to, kind of address some of this. So the first year we did about 5 projects, and then the second year we did maybe 7, and that was the end of it. So we can talk quite a lot about this, but I just want to give you a little bit of an idea of the structure of what we did. And I think it was really, I was frustrated. We always want more. I was frustrated with some things, but at the end, I think the project accomplished quite a lot. And one of the things that really was fantastic was in terms of how we built some sense of identity within the museum, especially with the staff in education. Everyone was very motivated. And then, we begin to do on the side workshops based on Theater of the Oppressed and Paulo Freire. So there was a lot of discussion in terms of methodology. And all that was trickled down to sort of school groups, which was really great. And then just to sum up this, I think the real value of this was that we engaged a professor from NYU for the entire cycle of 2 years to accompany and to actually she ran some of the workshops, and she wrote this really minutious kind of report on the whole process. And when we applied for the Smart Power grant, and Holly came to me and said, do you want to apply for this? And what do you want to do? I said, I have exactly the blueprint for that. We just went to all the documentation, and the grant writer just, so Smart Power, in a sense, was the continuation of Action Lab. And we still, to this day, we go back to this documentation, and even if I leave the museum in a few years, I think it will be something that will be there. Now it's kind of part of the DNA of the institution.
Right.
And I think anyone that comes will sort of benefit from that.
Great.
So,
That's fantastic.
good.
Last but certainly not least is Bill Adair, a program director at the Pew Center for Arts and Heritage in Philadelphia. Bill has over 2 decades of experience as a practicing museum educator and curator, most recently at the Rosenbach Museum and Library in Philadelphia, where he began as an artist in residence program, commissioned several new media projects, and produced a range of educational and public programs. Bill has a BA in history from University of Pennsylvania and an MA in cultural planning and policy, very relevant for tonight's discussion, from the University of California in Los Angeles. He is the co-editor of the newly published book, Letting Go, Sharing Historical Authority in a User-Generated World. Bill, take it away.
Hey everyone. So I work at a place called the Pew Center for Arts and Heritage, which is funded by the Pew Charitable Trust, which I'm sure many of you have heard of. It's a funder, an arts funder, and a think tank in cultural practice, in inventive and courageous cultural practice. So we look to fund projects that are consistent with the work that we're interested in, and we create discourse around such projects. Up until this summer, we had 7 different programs within the center, and they were predictably according to discipline. And the project that I want to talk to you about today was originally funded through our dance program. But this summer we collapsed 7 programs into 2 programs, and I think it's relevant. So we have all of our funding and discourse around performance, the performative, in one program, and then everything else in another program that we call exhibitions and public interpretation. And that's visual arts, public history, science, living collections, film, new media, etc. And of course there's overlap. And what we've already discovered a month into this new restructuring is that we're going to have to collapse into one program. We responded to the way organizations are thinking and the way artists are working in restructuring. We were tired of trying to fit projects and work into one category or another, one discipline or another, and the artists were really sick of it. The organizations also, and so we've tried this new structure, and it's working, although we're already finding that so many projects sit on the edge of performance and visual arts and interpretation. So stay tuned to what happens next year. Anyway, we're trying to evolve in response to the way that people work. Last year we supported a project called This Town is a Mystery, which was created and produced by Headlong Dance Theater. Some of you may have heard of them. It's one of the most, I would say, audacious, courageous, contemporary dance troupes in Philadelphia, and a number of different kinds of work. They've been around for about 15 years. I got to know them when they created a piece inspired by James Joyce's Ulysses when I was at the Roosevelt Museum Library. This Town is a Mystery involved collaboration with 4 different households, mostly lower income, in 4 very different neighborhoods in Philadelphia. First thing they did was a call for public interest. They worked with community groups, they put ads in newspapers, they got the word out that they wanted to create dances about ordinary people's lives in their homes. They wanted to actually work with the people who lived in these homes to be the performance, to be the dancers. So they actually got about 90 applications in this process, and they carefully chose 4 very different households. They worked with these families on developing short half-hour dance pieces about their lives and the homes and how their lives and their homes interact and intersect. Let's just stick with this image for now, and then I'll go through them in a minute. What's that? Then audiences were invited into these homes to watch these pieces as audience members. And you can see that along the edge of this photograph. So chairs were set up along the edge of the living room or the dining room or the kitchen or the bedroom, wherever these projects took place in the different houses. Everyone sat down after the performance and they ate a potluck dinner together. So you had to buy a ticket to this event, but you also had to bring meatloaf or a loaf of bread or brownies or whatever. So hundreds of people saw these shows last year, and it got great reviews from local press, lots of coverage in local press. And there was a lot of really good, warm feeling about this project. Why don't we go through the images really quickly? So this is one of the households. That's the last one? So let's stop with that one. Yeah, this is a family that was actually in the process of moving out of Philadelphia. And the last thing they did was sing My Way together. This family was really, really into this project. In fact, the boy was so excited about this project that he decided that he wanted to pursue his interest in dance and is now studying dance at a ballet, at the Pennsylvania Ballet Company in Philly. Why did they do this? Headlining its application on its website stated that they were interested in pursuing this project because every household is a universe, because the stories, lives, and homes of real Philadelphians are epic and surprising and moving and hilarious, because breaking bread with someone annihilates stereotypes, because being the show is better than watching the show, because Philadelphia has beautiful mysteries on every block. So as funders, we were very compelled by this project. We obviously funded it. We thought it was brave, and in many ways, it was extremely emotionally moving. Those of us that saw each of the families were very struck by the stories and were very moved by it, not a dry eye in the house kind of thing. We also realized in the process of this project and afterwards that it was problematic in a number of ways. Not surprisingly, a number of questions continued to emerge as the project unveiled. These are some of the questions that we continue to have and that we have engaged in with the dance group, and I'll end with these. What does it mean and how does it feel to have upper middle class white artists design and produce a project with the stories of mostly non-white, low-income people as its subject? What does it mean to have mostly white, upper-middle-class people go into a low-income home, watch the residents of the home perform for them, then eat with them, and then leave? Who has the cultural power here? Is real cross-cultural and cross-class dialogue possible in this construction, in this setting? That was obviously one of the points of the potluck, right? We're meeting people that we would not meet otherwise. Is it better than no dialogue, or is it worse? Once the project was over, what was Headlong's obligation to maintain a relationship with the families with which it worked? What is our obligation as the funder of this project? And who benefited economically from the project? How about artistically or emotionally? So, we're more about questions than we are answers.
Wow. So, why don't first, those questions are so good that they put my questions to shame. Why don't we set my questions aside for a minute, right? And focus on those questions, because they're actually really relevant, and they're relevant to your experience, right? Yeah.
Grab a mic. Yeah, everybody. I think there are enough mics for everybody, right?
Surprising, and all the time I'm thinking about how to put that project in our in our community, because it's really interesting. But I have some question. How do you choose the family, and how do you choose the audience for the program?
First of all, I just want to make it clear, I didn't do this project. All we did was fund it. So I will do my best to speak for the project. There was a very long and determined and thoughtful, can everyone hear me? Yes. Process of determining, of those 90 applications, who would have the most interesting stories. They certainly wanted a representation of ethnicities. Like I said, for the most part, the group of families did end up being low-income families. I don't know that was one of the points, but I suspect it was a hidden agenda, or it was an implicit agenda of the dance company, that they wanted to get to know what the lives of low-income people were in Philadelphia. Philadelphia is an extraordinarily poor city with a very wealthy downtown that's culturally vibrant and has some of the best restaurants in the country and some of the best cultural institutions in the country, and it's surrounded by people of extraordinarily low incomes in poverty. So it was clear that emerged as one of the things that this project was about. Does that sort of answer your question? And there was a second part.
The people, the
Oh, the audience was self-selecting. It was people that already knew the dance troupe. It was actually also part of the Philadelphia Fringe Festival, so it was, you know, the Philly
The
audience
audience
for
was
Fringe.
an educated art audience.
Absolutely.
Okay. And so, I'm interested, actually,
Mary, you actually brought in lots and lots of people because the water club became a public park, right? Were you thinking at all about who these people were when you brought them on?
Well, we were trying to just really get to as many places as possible, and we were really limited by basically we could only go to public piers, or we were paying for dockage. So we had certain constraints that we worked within, and I think, I don't know, I mean, depending on the place, depending on how into the community that we got and we were kind of allowed to get. So, for instance, we were on Governor's Island with no community. We didn't do anything. We were on South Street Seaport last minute, like, we didn't really get involved. West Harlem Park Piers, we were able to get really involved, and people there really cared about this coming, and to the point where they asked some of the same questions. So this is going to be here for 2 weeks, people are going to get involved, and then you're going to leave. And I think that's a great point, and that's something that I hadn't really thought about. What is the impact going to be here, if any? You know, you hope there is, but then you know it's just so temporary. I think the advantage of it being temporary is that you have a lot more options. You can do something kind of crazy like this because it's not going to be there forever. So people are sort of less concerned because it'll be gone soon, and they're more concerned because it'll be gone. So I think there's pros and cons to each place, and temporary projects I think they're problematic, but they also allow for other things to be able to happen.
Sergio, do you speak to that? You're often representing public projects to community groups that you've been working with for a while.
Yeah, I was actually, listening to you, and I was wondering about the selection, whether you have a hand in the selection.
Funders? No, we didn't. The dance.
The dance company. Because, when we did Smart Power, Elizabeth is here, we worked together that. And for me, it was very clear, I don't want to be part of the selection. I want to put a panel there. And, for the Smart Power, we had about 900 applications for 15 slots, and it was nationwide. So for me, as a designer of programs, the joy is to actually look at those 900 and study what's coming. So I'm not too interested in curate. If I want to curate, I can have a gallery and do a curatorial job. But in a program like this, I'm very interested in kind of getting to know what's out there. So for example, very interesting data came out in Smart Power that a lot of the applicants, like a huge percentage, was teachers. Lots of teachers interested in being in the field and doing work with the community. So it was very clear for us that they did not have the expertise in doing art, which was, the core of the thing. So for me, I see the thing more from the sort of perspective of designing a program.
okay.
And even like sort of the outreach, for me it's all like, if I could just write an equation and this equation is, fireproof, I would do it.
Right.
Because, I really...
Good luck with that.
Good luck with that, right? But it's just like you think about, the range of the program, who you want to reach, and then the whole thing just kind of, moves each other, and then, the whole thing happens. And sometimes you are for big surprises, so you have like great audience. Sometimes, not that much, but I still, maybe it's a luxury, but I still feel that, I think the only, let's say, participation that I feel very passionate about it, and that I go a little bit sort of a further, is that kind of the part of the audience that actually participates in the making. So for example, your project, that we actually, for Smart Power, Elizabeth traveled to a lot of countries to determine partners there that would kind of recruit people to work with the artists. So that kind of thing I'm very kind of interested. The audience coming and it's something that I personally, it's not my job,
Right.
which is great.
That's great. So, and Maria, you are a participant who is working very actively in somebody's art project, right? So, so how does all this read to you?
That project? Oh, no. It's too much money for us. No, I don't know. It's interesting. I love the way you explain how did you do the projects, and I think if I see that project from my perspective, I think for me, it's too much like a museum. I need to be more involved with the community. If I am with you, I say, okay, I go to the community, I go to the church, I need to talk with the, it's what I think. You do many things, you can do many things, and I think you can help the community a little bit more. Another public, the applicants say just teachers, maybe you need to look for another people in the community. I don't know how do you manage that things.
I actually do quite a lot of that. I try not to repeat myself every year, but my first year at the museum, it was actually going to all the schools that I could and talk to principals. And on Sundays, I would go for tours of the concourse to kind of get to know the Bronx. I would go to attend church and talk to, and then you begin to kind of have a sense of, how the community operates. But as a program designer, you cannot do that on, sort of all the time.
Yeah.
So for example, there are programs at the museum that, you have an idea, and then you try, and then the program is okay. And then you try again, and then in mushrooms. So for example, we have a family program now that we have lines of families outside waiting to come in. It's extremely successful. Am I going to recruit all the families? No, I don't do that. I think about, the structure, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then there is a whole kind of chain of command there is someone that writes to all the community groups, to the churches, and call, and so it's kind of it's not a huge operation, but it is a little bit of an operation, and that it's not just me doing all those parts.
And you think the family thing you are doing now is better than the other one, or is the same? You said you got a program, family program now.
Mm-hmm.
Is so good for the community. They are participating more.
If the program is better now,
I don't know. I'm asking.
yeah, I think the program is really, really good. But it's again, my job is to measure and to make sure, so every time the program happens, the following week I meet with the staff and say, what happened? What went wrong? And how can we do better? Do we need more security? Do we need, I describe myself as the backup singer. I'm always, I'm not the artist, and I'm not, the instructor. I am there to make sure that I have a structure that it's sound enough to support that. Because I had experience at the museum of programs being very successful, and we're not prepared to that. and that I had to go to the door because the auditorium was filled to capacity. One of the security guards wanted to call the police because there was like 200 people outside. And I am at the door, and I'm just like, no, I cannot be at the door, you know. So that kind of thing teaches me that, you know, the structure is very, very important. In all kind, you know, Mary got sick in the Philippines, and there was Elizabeth and I kind of, you know, do we need to bring her back, or, you know, so it's constantly measured, but it's all in the background, and, you know, talking to people that can actually, you know, bring medication to Mary and make her feel better.
Sure. Or going back to Mary's project a little bit, you were saying that at some sites where you were landing, there wasn't a real community outreach because it was all last minute. But I want to know the difference, you know, between what worked to really bring people in terms of community outreach and what didn't work.
Definitely having some liaison with community groups, or, you know, in the Bronx, it could have been Sergio at the Bronx Museum, for example. I think every time we had a liaison with a group where we were docking, it was more successful. People knew about it faster. It was sort of also off the grid. Not a lot of people go to the waterfront, and so you could easily miss it. You could see it from afar and be drawn to it, which was, I think, a strength. And people would come who wanted to, but I think the places that we did have outreach, and we were kind of overwhelmed and busy with just coordinating this barge to get to the next place and all the things that went with it. It was an enormous headache and challenge at certain points, and a lot of things I think would have kind of, I don't know. I mean, I think some places that we did have outreach were more successful.
Right. I have a question to both Bill and all three, everybody actually, about the role that institutions can play, right? As artists are making these projects that require more and more outreach and that have these tricky parts, right? What role do we as institutions that support artists have to play in maintaining you know, these relationships over time and making sure that they're ethical relationships? Anyone? Yeah.
Well, one answer I have is that we can acknowledge these questions, and we can bring them to the surface, both for the project that's already happened, but for any project that comes to us now. So for instance, we just funded a project called Funeral for a Row Home in Philadelphia, and it's a group of artists who have acknowledged one of the biggest issues in Philadelphia in terms of the built environment, which is the fact that we have hundreds of thousands, really tens of thousands literally, of abandoned homes in Philly. And not in the core, obviously, because those homes are all $500,000, but we're talking about the outer neighborhoods. So they wanted to create public discourse around this issue. So they came to us for a grant, and they received a grant for $200,000 to create a project that documents the history of this home, the stories of the people who lived in it, the neighborhood, and how the neighborhood has changed over time. There was a building boom in the 19th century when Philly was a big industrial town, and then there was white flight, and I don't have to tell you the story of the 20th century. So we now have many of these abandoned homes. This home was already scheduled for demolition. It wasn't that these artists decided we're going to demolish this home, so that was important. And they're creating a whole series of public programs around this home, and then it will be demolished ceremoniously, and then there will be a funeral with a public parade in North Philly down the street, marking the demise of this home, and hopefully it will raise public profile on an extremely important continuing problem and issue in the city. So we were smart enough to ask some of these questions this time at the beginning, before we funded, and we really wanted it to be clear to the people who were doing this project that there's a, that there are real artistic, intellectual, emotional, political risks in doing a project like this. And to acknowledge them right from the beginning, not to say, okay, don't do it. Of course, we've already had lots of questions emerge about this project from the public, from the neighborhood. Why would you spend $200,000 to renovate that house? Right? And a funeral in a neighborhood that has funerals regularly, and this is a kind of mock funeral? So there's some very, very real questions. We thought that the project was still worth funding because so many questions do emerge, but we asked them right from the beginning. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it is. And actually it reminds me of something that Maria, you and I were talking about the first time we talked about this, right? Which is the difference between an art project and a more practical project.
Yeah, I would say the institution need to rewrite the the question they do to the artist or person who proposed a project, because in the immigrant movement we got that problem. I thank God for Tom because Tom understands because he understands what Tanya proposed to him, but it's not the regular, thing with the other institution. With when Tanya proposed something, they say, "Oh no, it's too, too crazy." Maybe I don't know what exactly they say, but we don't have I think the way the institution evaluate the projects have to be re-examined. They need to, you guys need to need to do a different way for evaluating the proposals. Maybe you have to go to the community. You need to ask. Maybe one important part of that would be go to the community, ask what they think, what they want, what they improve their life with that, and maybe you change the way you evaluate the project, and you can help more project like immigrant movement, and
The thing is that there's no community to go to ask, is this okay, right? I mean, of course, this group of artists were thoughtful about talking with community groups and things like that, but that doesn't mean that everyone was consulted, right? It's still highly risky in terms of its capacity to offend or upset someone, no matter how much I think community outreach was done in advance of it.
Well, and I actually have a question about whether or not we want to always avoid offending people, with art.
We funded it.
Yeah.
We funded it.
No, I just wanted to throw that idea.
I'm not saying that, but I'm talking a general idea about that, because we are knocking door to door, and I think there are so many interesting things happening over there. I know maybe it's some different project. I know that, but you are artists. You need to be ready for different things in the life. Correct.
Sergio, do you have?
I think this is really on the mark, because I was thinking a few years ago we began to put together advisory groups to help us brainstorm exhibition. So the first one was we created in 2005 because there was a centennial in the Bronx about to happen in 2009, and I was going to do this big exhibition. It was the centennial of the Grand Concourse. And I was like, well, I cannot just kind of take all this is huge, it's history, it's, you have to bring all the partners and stakeholders. So we brought a group of architects, urban planners, historians, and it was fantastic to have, every 2 months, people talking about the Bronx and this and that, and help us inform kind of the exhibition. Now that model, actually, we replicated when we did an exhibition about the civil rights. It was an exhibition that was coming from the High Museum, but still we needed to educate our staff, mostly young people that have not been, kind of exposed to the history. So we brought in a professor from Baruch to kind of, do conversations about that. So that model now actually became, at the museum, a community advisory council. That is members of the community. We have about 30 people that come every month, and Holly is always in this meeting, and the number of staff. And it's basically listening to, what's going on in the community. And then, the back and forth about this is that when we have some projects that we want to, for example, if you want to propose something for the Bronx, we just say, well, you have to do a presentation for the community council.
And this body is already formed, and
It's
it meets on a
formed,
regular
it's
basis
fixed.
anyway, right?
It's fixed, and people are really committed to it. And the buy-in is that we allow them to program some programs at the museum. So they do a series of programs for the elderly, for local talents, conversations, and so forth. But this is just kind of a preface, it's a one preface, but the need is very small. When Thomas Hirschhorn came recently to the museum and said, I'm doing this project in the Bronx, and I want the Bronx Museum to help us with outreach, schools, and I was just like, well, we can help you, but first you'll have to go meet the community council. And it was great. Thomas is very charming, and he came with Yasmil, and that was kind of a good introduction for him to actually do what he did, and I thought it was a great project. But that kind of communication, I think it's vital. I think, I don't think I can decide on a big project like that just, between the five of us. You have to have, the buy-in. And I wouldn't even say like the community, what is the community board? That's kind of a whole different set of things. But there are like some groups already in the Bronx that, you can go and test ideas, and you can introduce projects, and it's great to hear from them. So.
That's interesting. And Maria, at Immigrant Movement International, there's also kind of an authorship stake, right? Like so people who come volunteer, they propose programs.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the people are coming every day, and when they ask for something, with the person there say, okay, that is free, but please, we just waiting for some volunteer. Whatever you want. Help us to clean, help us to be part of the class, or whatever you can do. We found so many people. They come from the country. Their studio over there. They are really prepared to teach, to show something, and we found the people, and this is incredible because we have a meeting with the new council. Hi, Rana. Rana maybe has some more information about that, but in Immigrant Movement, we are forming a little school. They call the Escuelita. We are together once a month talking about what is the next thing for Immigrant Movement. And I'm trying to plan it, how to put together all we have, the resources we have. We don't have money enough to make everything we want, but we have the most impressive people in the community. People, from the, how to say, community from, Indian, from a community who are governed for, they have a governor, but they don't, use the government for nothing. They are independent communities, and they almost don't speak Spanish or English at all. Wherever they speak their language, they understand a little bit more each day with us, working with us. I know that is for. Okay, we need to show the community what we got, you know, and we're trying that every day. We are working that every day, asking people, bring people, asking to everybody, please volunteer with us, because we really need you, okay?
Well, it also sounds like you bring out a lot of things in people when people volunteer for immigrant movement, right?
Yeah.
So instead of getting, you know, like lessons delivered to you and you paying money, it sounds more like, you know, people come and they say, I can do this,
Yeah.
right? And that's an opportunity a lot of the time.
Yeah, it is.
That makes sense. Mary, I'm interested in your, well, because you make things, and I think that this is very typical of these types of projects, right? Like, so the project itself is a lot, right? And it's a lot of things to manage, even just in the making of it, right? Because and then it's got all of these people attached to it, and it needs all of these relationships. How do you manage all of these stakeholders as an artist who doesn't have an institution backing them?
Well, I think you're dependent on them, so you have to. I guess, you know, when I'm thinking about those projects and thinking about what you just said, Maria, it's some of the most important parts are when you're meeting a group of new people and you're both learning from each other, and it becomes a larger collaboration than any of the stakeholders who are involved. Then you realize that everybody is a stakeholder, and what you guys are saying about the judgment of some projects, and I guess it's making me think of this video that I saw. It's a short documentary about this community group who was kind of going against, they wanted to save this park before it was being paved over. They spent so much time working on the wording to how they were going to band together and save the park that by the time they got the wording down, the park was already paved over. And so I want to just bring up the idea of urgency with some of these projects, and the fact that the system of like going through different parties to allow something to happen can also be problematic, because it can
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that one of the things that an artist can really bring to the table, because you are a free agent, you are a person who's just operating yourself. And that sense of urgency that can come with that is really important. And I think that institutions, do you guys think that institutions kind of borrow some of that urgency a little bit when they're, by funding a particularly brave, your mission is actually very interesting in terms of this courageous work, right, brave work. That's
imaginative and courageous.
Exactly.
And urgent? Yeah, I would absolutely. I mean, in terms of, you know, my background is in history, so when we were all split into our different disciplines, the program that I ran was the public history program, and it was about making connections between historical issues and contemporary issues, and often those were the most urgent of contemporary issues. And abandoned homes, and a lack of dialogue between, or an acknowledgement of, the two very different cities existing within one geography in Philadelphia. Those are fairly urgent issues.
Yeah.
So yes, absolutely, I would say that was part of why we decided to fund them.
Sure.
And evaluate.
I work in a museum, so it's a city institution. We cannot do anything that's urgent. Urgent is like, if there is a leak, that's urgent. But in terms of, saving the park or whatever, I wish I could, I cannot. So everything has, a process. So for me, it's not about urgency, but it's about, is it vital? It's vital for this community. So, it's so interesting that I kind of, I fell in this panel here and in this profession because, 10 years ago I never thought about this, because I was reading my concrete poetry or whatever, and
Adair.
yeah, and I was like, I used to work for the Metropolitan Museum, and like, oh, these great paintings, and then I got to the Bronx, and it's just like, well, there are no warriors anymore, So, but then I began to think in terms of, is this important for this community? Is this vital? And the vitality does not mean that it's urgent. It has to be now and ever. But I actually want to introduce something else in this, which is, the urgency and the vitality of the artist, which I think in this whole program, one of the things that I always kind of think in terms of management, and Elizabeth is here, she will remember that we always had this conversation. We would read the proposal, and then we read, the CV, and then we would look at each other like, do you think this person can do this? And it's like that question, can you do this? So, Mary can do that. So I'm very happy to be here with Mary because, the plot project is amazing, and it was, I don't know how she's still alive after that. It was a lot of, but I have to tell you that sometimes, and I'm sure you've been through that, you get this unbelievable proposal, and you invest in it, and it fizzles, and that's one concern that I have, because I have to respond to my funders and so forth. So it's a whole new set of kind of concerns and stuff. So.
Well, and not only that, but when a like say a sculptural installation, right, like within the museum doesn't go according to plan, like that's one thing. Right, but when you're engaging with 50 different community groups, or you're deeply investing in the infrastructure in Corona, Queens, right? Like, I mean, that takes the failure, or and it gives it a whole new public face, right? So it is risky. Yeah. No, I agree.
And then just
I think I'm saying the same thing in a different way. It's not just the urgency of the issue, right, or even the urgency of what an organization wants to do. It's also very much, in both of the cases that I mentioned, the urgency of an artist's practice.
Yeah.
And their particular interest, and their settling on a particular way of working at a particular time that we also want to be supportive of and responsive to.
Yeah.
Can I just add something to it? So, in relation to urgency and vitality, Thomas Hirschhorn, his project, which was so fantastic, he actually proposed to us 10 years ago. It was when I first came to the museum. One day, Tom Ackles calls, and we would love to drive around the Bronx and look for a site. We want to do this project, and we did. We spent the whole afternoon with them, going, he was very interested in doing his project in the Bronx, and then they left, and we never heard from them because Tom left to board and so forth. 10 years after, Thomas come back again, and I was just like, what? And I actually have to say that I was so pleased to see that. His sense of perseverance and commitment. He wanted to do that project, and he wanted to do it in the Bronx. I was just like, it was fantastic. So for me, that tells a lot about the urgency and vitality. So
yeah.
Sorry.
5 minutes. Okay. Yeah. So
Mary, I'm curious about your own urgency, and I'm also curious about how you experience Tanya's urgency, right? So.
Okay. I don't know. I mean,
Do you feel urgent?
I do. I think that if the project that I'm working on or that I want to work on doesn't feel that way to me, then it's not going to be successful. So that's all I have to add on that, is that I really have to be in it.
It's not worth it.
yeah, absolutely. And
Maria.
Okay, my son used to say, "Mommy, nothing is urgent. It's when you have to do something, you have to do it. Give me that." But the Tanya's urgency now is to keep the project going. Okay, and I think it's easier easier now because the community finally is inside the immigrant movement. The community is helping with ideas, and we got more volunteers. You know, we need more because actually the Quiz Museum is helping with some they give some budget, but we need more to pay some person because we got volunteer, but we need special people inside the immigrant movement, and I think we can do it. We're gonna do it. We are doing actually so much for the community, but actually we go to the third year, and it's good, you know. As experience is good, and maybe I'm so passionate. You feel that, I think, and I'm trying to see more, you know, in the future about immigrant movement. I don't want to think that beautiful project could finish the next year. You know, I need to feel the permanent and everything about the immigrant movement. I'm asking you for, you know, we are here. There is our information. Please, if you get an idea, please talk with us, because the principal way to do the thing in immigrant movement is hearing people, talking with people, and you know, we got open arms for everybody, and we are waiting for all of you.
Fantastic. That's a really great place to open it up to all of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, not yet. Let's make sure it's on.
Is this on now?
Yes.
My question is for Bill. I love your set of questions about your project, and as an artist who works with engaging the community, I'm curious, do you develop that set of questions for every project that you decide to fund? And then do you make those questions available in a place where artists like me can access those questions?
Now we do. We do ask those questions regularly, and they're part of our vetting and are part of our application process. Do we make them available to other kinds of arts? No, it's a great idea. I think as part of our figuring out a way to be a part of this discourse, I think that's an excellent suggestion. You know, we have microsites for each of these projects, so that's the kind of place I think where these conversations can emerge. I'm happy to share them with you.
I would love to know.
Great, you got it.
Next question.
Hi. A couple of things. You were regretting that projects end and what happens after, in the sense where that it doesn't go on. I won't say don't worry, but I was on your barge. I've been part of dance. I've helped people develop the dance program who never thought that their parents' history of work could be part of the dance, and they did a fantastic job. What you show is something is possible, and we take that away. So thank you. And apropos of your question, I'm an economist, and I've been part of evaluating, you know, both creating things and evaluating things. And so often, the creators of a project are different from the people who evaluate the project. And your questions link that. And please do link it. It is lawful to be evaluated by people who have no thought of the creation.
Does anybody want to speak to that?
Not me.
Amen. Next question.
I mean, all you can do in a situation as a funder is ask what the definition of success is for a project right from the beginning. And then as part of the evaluation, try and figure out whether they achieve that success. I mean, I think that's the only fair way to evaluate.
And ask as you go along, because
That's
often
right.
as you do something, your own
definition of
The
success
definition of
changes.
success
Very good point.
emerges in different ways.
Good point. Yeah, there's certainly no formula.
Hi, my question's for Sergio. Can you give some examples of some of the artist-engaged projects in the Hunts Point community and how the artists work with the community and what resulted as for that
Oh
project?
gosh. Yeah, there was, I can't remember the names, that was quite some time again, but Darkin is here. Darkin can actually talk about his work. But for example, there was an artist, I think she was from Chile, and she was a printmaker, and she engaged with the students doing printmaking. And that was one of the projects that kind of addressed sort of police harassment on youth. And actually well, not me, but the Point brought in some policemen from the precinct, and there was a little bit of a mediation there. There was another project that was a dancer, and she was dealing basically with the gay and lesbians in the community that they sort of kind of at risk, kind of, sort of a community. There was another project that was for, it was related to drug use and sort of recycling of, I can't remember that one specifically, but each project was kind of, addressing some of that. But there was a mix of dance, there was quite a lot of dance. There was some visual arts and theater. So there was, in the second year, there was this very young woman who curated, she was very interested in, she was very knowledgeable of theater of the oppressed. And she put together a group of youth and sort of doing theater of the oppressed and things like that. So I have this documented. If anyone is interested, I'll be happy to share. I don't have off the top of my mind right now. So.
I want to thank a lot of people before everybody can get up. Hold on 1 second. I want to thank Donald and Shelley Rubin for letting us use this great space. I want to thank FIAF. This has been a fantastic collaboration. We're really excited about it. Simon and Lily have been wonderful to work with. I want to thank these wonderful panelists, Sergio, Bill, Mary, Maria. You should meet and talk to these people, have a glass of wine, eat some cheese, right? Look at some great Cuban art, and we'll continue the conversation. Thank you for coming out. Have a great night.